Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network.
'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven.
A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UBNradio.com.
And greetings and salutations, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. You have tuned in to Dr. Judy WTF. And I think we've got some camera issues here. Hold a second. Where'd they go? Here we go. We're good. In fact, there we are. There I am. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's Dr. Judy WTF. What the Freud? I'm your host, Walt Lusk. And, of course, we have Dr. Judy Rosenberg in studio. And we have a really fun show today. We're going to be dealing with a very interesting topic entitled Famous People and the Effects of Fame on Celebrities. And I've always said that I think the famous people, the celebrities in this country, are our royalty. So we're going to be talking about a lot of hole in the soul. And Dr. Judy, of course, is the world-renowned author of a book entitled Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect. And she's also the founder of Psychological Healing Center with offices all over the world. Okay, only in Sherman Oaks and Beverly Hills. But she can be your therapist no matter where you are in the world.
Teletherapy all over the world.
Teletherapy, that's correct. Whether it be Stitcher, not Stitcher, or on Stitcher and iTunes, through Skype or on the phone, of course. And just for those of you who have iPhones all over the world, you can catch up on what's going on in the Psychological Healing Center with the new app on iPhones and soon to be, of course, on Android. And you can catch stuff from our show, blogs, information from the Psychological Healing Center, and excerpts from her book, which Judy has, and she can hold up if you care to.
And here
right
it is.
There's the book.
And
it's available on Amazon, on Kindle, and paperback.
So the book is a metaphor for decoding the past and recoding the future, and obviously being the cause of shifting out of the wounds of the past and how they impact you. And so just a little bit about the app. You can go to the App Store and find Psychological Healing Center, and it's as simple as that. And then done. And then you can link into the book. You can purchase the book through the app and get on our site. And, of course, access the radio show very easily through the app.
Yes, or you can listen to us live on TuneIn or pull us on Stitcher and iTunes and watch us on YouTube. Thank you so much for all the subscribers that are subscribing and watching. It's fun to have it added, and our audience on that is growing every day.
So as of late, I've been privy to working with people who either are very famous and suffer the effects of fame, also benefit from the effects of fame, and then
it's a double-edged sword.
It really is. And then the mothers of children who are famous and what that does to family dynamics. So it's been an interesting week. I've been dealing with this topic for obviously many years, and I wanted to share some of my own experience with this topic, and Walt has pulled a lot of information on this topic.
But you know what I wanted to start with, and I meant to, and that is a testimonial on your book that just popped up, I noticed, on Amazon. This book provides what appears to be a valuable process that can be used to help a variety of people get back on track. I appreciate that Dr. Rosenberg wants her patients to get from point A to point B and is focused on that outcome from the start. She also makes a good point that improving the mental health of the current generation will make a significant positive impact in the future, which is kind of what we try and do in the show. I won't know for years what extent the book helps to solve the family's problems, but I feel that I have already gotten more than $2,000 of therapist time to get a basic understanding of causes and depression and possible solutions.
And if you're listening, I want to thank you so much. We want to thank you for this beautiful acknowledgement. And so tonight's topic, the effects of fame. Effects of fame are
everyone involved. The actor Gary Coleman discovered his fame changed his parents' intentions. The death of pop star Michael Jackson demonstrates that a great deal of fame creates a great deal of trust issues that affects lives. Magic Johnson proved that fame can change the world in a positive way, while the rappers Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls proved that fame can change the world in a negative way. They didn't like each other, and they kind of literally took it out on each other. Overall, like anything in life, fame is what you make it. Unfortunately, people do not consider the ups and downs of fame. They do not consider the bad aspects of fame, such as the pressure fame puts on an individual, which we're going to talk a lot about, always being in the public eye, and involuntarily becoming a role model for millions.
Which puts a lot of pressure on the people in the spotlight.
Yes, as Albert Einstein said, it's strange to be known so universally and yet be so lonely.
And that's one of the double-edged negative aspects of fame, is that it creates a kind of a bubble of loneliness.
Yes,
and
it
also
does.
creates a sense of paranoia. And the paranoia is not unfounded, because
No, it's not.
if you're really in the limelight, then of course expect paparazzi to be all over you. And so what I've learned from some of my patients is that the shots are not as valuable if you're wearing glasses and wearing a hat, and they do that, they hide under that.
The shots?
The shots, right. So for those of you who are listening, who are dealing with paparazzi, just know that when you don't get a good snapshot of the person, a full-on snapshot, and they're behind their glasses or their hats or what have you, you're really devaluing the monetary and the PR effects of that snapshot. FYI.
So they don't look good, huh?
They don't. It's just it's not
Yeah.
the same as having a full-blown shot of the person.
Yeah, but that's what TMZ lives for.
That's how they can ruin it for
Yes.
people. So that's the point. So one of the aspects that I notice is, let's talk about the bubble of isolation, because what happens when you're famous is that all of a sudden you don't understand why people are wanting to be your friend,
Well, yeah, they talk about fake friends.
Fake friends.
Yeah.
So you don't know whether that person is there because they find you interesting or find you heartwarming or find you lovable in whatever way. You always have in the back of your mind, what is the agenda here? Are they trying to befriend me in order to further their own agenda? And that is something that very, very famous people deal with. So sometimes people will say to me in my practice, I'm on the verge of fame and I want to get a girlfriend or a boyfriend before fame hits me so that I could really understand that person loves me for me. And, it's so understandable.
Yeah, for me.
For me,
Yeah.
right.
It's actually a catch-22 sometimes. Artists want fame. They seek it. They purposely do things to achieve it. But then when it comes, they can't wait to get away from it fast enough.
Right. So nobody, look, we want to just go through life without being caught on camera with every move that we make. We don't like the idea of being scrutinized. Me personally, I wouldn't like the idea of walking into a restaurant and have everybody looking at me. That wouldn't be fun. Or being in the car and have people snapping shots. That would be annoying, to say the least. But there was a time in my life that I thought, it would be so cool to be that person and to have all this PR and have great name recognition. And that's nice too. I mean, it's nice PR. It gets your publicity record up there and so on and so forth. But the other side of it is really, really annoying at the very least, and very disturbing.
It can be. And I'll tell you,
Right.
I did some public speaking some time ago in front of thousands of people a few times. And I was at the LA County Fair, which is a big event here in LA.
Okay.
And 3 people came up to me when I was there for the day and asked me if I was who I was. And I thought, ooh, okay, how in the world do we know each other? Oh, you don't know me, but I heard you speak. And I'm thinking, oh, great. Yeah, I'm becoming more, quote, famous, and now people are recognizing me. I still don't know why. And it was weird. It was very weird. It's like, oh, now I have to live in a glass house.
I have to tell you, Walt, I've never shared this with you, but sometimes people will call me up and say, Dr. Judy, I've been listening to you and Walt for like many months, and they get nervous talking to me, and I it's like hard for me to connect with that because I'm just me. And so, I'm really nervous, and wow, I'm going to meet you next Friday. I'm really looking forward to it, and it's just beautiful because we're really touching people.
We are, and a lot of those folks have actually listened to a lot of our shows, and on YouTube we have well over 100 hours if you really want to dive into what we've done and get a feel for the healing human disconnect aspect of the show.
And Walt, I want to thank you for posting all of our episodes up on YouTube.
Oh,
we have every single subject under the sun: depression, anxiety, relationship issues, of course, narcissism, effects of narcissism all over the place.
Yes.
Our most listened to
We're narcissistic
shows.
about narcissism.
We sure are. Yeah, right.
But you know what? There's in terms of interesting is it found that the some research the average age of death of celebrities overall was 58.
58?
Compared to 72 as an average age for regular Americans.
Wow.
They're 4 times more likely to kill themselves than an average American. Now we have actually did a show on that not too long ago. It was late December about celebrities that checked out too soon. A lot of it was, of course, due to drug addiction, which we're going to talk about. And the drug of choice, a lot of it, from my research, was heroin. It's just it's bad stuff. But the 4 issues, there's 4 issues, 5 issues that 5. That celebrities face, and we'll elaborate on these. One, as you've talked about it, the bubble, is no privacy. We just talked about it. Everything celebrities do is publicized for the world to see, discuss, and mock. And especially now, everybody's got cell phones, everybody's on social media. It doesn't, somebody does something, and before they even get home, it's already on Twitter or Facebook. Right. They may, quote, act out in response to feeling suffocated by their carefully constructed public image. Self-destructive acting out behaviors often include unsavory sexual appetites, scandalous liaisons, volatile outbursts, or other destructive patterns such as uncontrolled substance abuse. Overwhelming feeling of shame when the public image is destroyed.
And one of the defense mechanisms famous people are famous for is using drugs as a way to buffer the emotions, because if you're observed that closely, it's going to be disturbing. It's going to be a lot of pressure to maintain what we'll get into a little bit, a sense of a fake self. So there's this real self, and then there's this fake self that's built around what the audience wants to see and hear.
Or maybe the self is what they are portraying in a movie or on TV.
That
too. And they expect that person, that actor or actress, to be that 24/7.
Right.
And they can't live up to it, and they can't be it because it's not them.
Yeah, and it's tough on an individual to be over-idealized and then devalued. Can you imagine one day you're on top of the mountain and everybody thinks you're amazing, and then you do something like crash a car or get caught beating your husband or wife or, whatever, and then the quick devaluation. So it's this roller coaster ride, really. And so if you're under that kind of limelight, everything is a free-for-all.
It's not a limelight, Judy. It's a microscope.
Okay, that's better said. I'll have to
because
agree.
Then next is loss sense of self, unable to assess their individuality. In the media world, fraught with stereotypes. The cause makes choices that are no longer reflected their true self, which further compromises their sense of their identity. Over time, they're feeling isolated and alone and have difficulty trusting others. I had an attorney I worked with years ago. She was a child actor. And, you know, she was a brunette and had, I think, you know, brown eyes or something. And so one week she was a blonde and they'd put contacts in and she was a blonde, blue-eyed blonde. And the next week she was a brunette and she just got so tired of being somebody else and being basically a puppet.
Right.
And she was very, very successful. And she was even, you know, 40 years later still reaping the rewards of what she did, but she just walked. She couldn't do it anymore.
It's tiring. It's hard on the system, isn't it?
Yes.
And so one of the things that I find in my practice is not only does the famous person suffer, the spouse and the
whole family
suffers.
Whole family.
So it has these ripple effects on everyone, unfortunately. And so I find that some of them almost get into car accidents. I've heard that story.
Well, Justin Bieber crashed a Ferrari.
Because
other ones.
paparazzi.
Yes.
You know, they get accosted in a dangerous manner and broken into, and so then they need extra protection. And so now a lot of the money that they make being famous, now they have
Security.
to spend on security. So it's pretty disastrous, and it's just something that not everyone can take. And some people crack under that kind of pressure. And then when they crack under that kind of pressure, then their family members absorb some of that pressure as well, and it becomes a chaotic mess for everyone. And then not to mention the children of famous people, right? They are born into the fame, and they're automatically famous. They didn't ask for it. It's not like they woke up and said, I want to be famous. Like, oh my God, I'm famous just because I have this name attached to me. And then that creates a bunch of horrible fallout material and a lot of stress.
Yes, huge. I mean,
Yeah.
Michael Jackson once said, fame can be imprisoning. Kevin Costner said one time, I would trade it all for anonymity again. Jodie Foster says, it's funny to be someone everyone has an opinion about.
I love that line.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
And they have to develop a split personality. You've
Right.
got your public persona, and then of course you have your private persona. But the problem is, if you're out in public, are you now a public persona or are you a private person? And so it gets very schizophrenic.
It does. Imagine walking into a public place and everyone's smiling at you, and they know you and you don't know
They don't
them
know
at
them
all.
worth a
So they have
darn.
all this information on you, and they have this relationship with you because they've seen you in umpteen movies, or they've heard you perform in umpteen shows or on the radio, and they know all about you, and they're just so happy to see you. And then you've got to kind of muster up this, hi, nice to meet you too. And there's this kind of a disconnect
it's
right
interesting
there.
And I'm a big fan of Johnny Carson, and he knew a long time that he was in their living room every night.
Right.
Now, of course, he
Right.
was in their living room. They weren't in his living room.
Exactly.
And so 20 million
Exactly.
people at the peak used to watch Johnny Carson. I mean, and he had no privacy here in the United States.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why he always went to Wimbledon and such out of the country, because nobody watched him in other parts of the world. He wasn't able to translate it to other parts of the world and Europe and such. So he'd always go vacation in Europe because he had a lot more privacy.
We talked last time about trophy kids and
Yes, we
how
did.
parents get involved in ramping up their children's popularity because they want their children to be little mini-me's and so on. And sometimes what happens is, I also see this in my practice, where a parent will help to get the child to a certain place, and then once that child is famous, the child will literally turn on that parent.
Yes, they will.
And bite their head off. I have seen this happen on a couple of occasions.
Well, it's worse than that. I had a daughter who was an actress and a model, and I was her chauffeur, her chaperone, and her Sherpa for several years before she was 18. And I always took her, of course, to the auditions. And one of the big questions I always asked was, are you, my daughter, are you here because you want to be here, or is it because your parents really want you to be here?
Right.
Because the motivation is entirely different.
Right, and one of the things, the dynamics that occurs with these families is that, because I'll confront my patient. I'm pretty right on the confrontative button because I don't like them to stay in therapy too long and waste years and years in therapy. So
Yeah, you're pretty quick.
I'll really go into why they gave their child so much power. And oftentimes why they do that is because their relationship with their spouse or their family of origin isn't really strong. So they get enmeshed with their own child, and then the child becomes this princess, and the mother doesn't even know that she's creating this monster. And so she doesn't really teach her child the concept of reciprocity and partnership, and what I call panel number 7, which is interconnection and sharing, and the 1 and 1 is 3 phenomenon. So at the end of this horrendous road, the mother feels totally vampired. And instead of the mother having a lot of light out of this and the child having a lot of light out of this also, the mother feels completely depleted, and oftentimes monetarily as well. And then the child grows and grows and grows in her narcissism, because she never really did this all by herself, but now takes full credit. Not only that, but goes after the mother for all the money. And it's really, really sad, because the mother or the father's just standing there in tremendous pain. Look what I've done for my daughter. I wasted all of my adult years helping to promote my daughter or my son or whoever.
And this is the thanks I get.
And this is the thanks I get. Right. And then the daughter puffs up even more because she attaches herself to other people
who are going to puff her up.
But they have agendas.
Well, of course they do.
So, right? Yeah. Okay, so they'll puff her up as long as she's young and beautiful, or he's young and beautiful and lucrative, and once they're done with that individual, it'll just
deflate fast.
Drop them, and then they'll deflate really quickly.
Because there's an article here we have, why do some child stars implode? And what's really interesting here is, and we're talking, of course, about Amanda Baines. We talked to her a long time ago about her implosion.
Yeah,
man, that was
2 years
an
ago
incredible
or so.
implosion.
Right.
And of course, the infamous one is Lindsay Lohan. She was amazing as a kid and hasn't been able to handle it, shoplifting and all.
Right.
But the thing is that you're a child, and you're a child actor, and you're working. What you have is a job.
Right.
The job is a very hard job. Everybody thinks being a child star is glamorous. But when you're on the show and you're often carrying that whole show and you know it, you have to pull that off every single week. Now you have to know your lines. People are making money off you. And somebody who was a co-star in a series said that, then on top of that, you have to go to a school. And then, you miss out on lots of things, like maybe you'll miss your prom. And then, you see kids going out and having a good time, and you're working because at 8 years old, you have a job, a J-O-B, and it's a tremendous amount of pressure.
So how do you think your peers feel about you at that stage? They're working at McDonald's.
I know, and they're going, oh my gosh, you're so lucky.
Yeah, sure, so lucky. So let's talk a little bit about envy, because this is something that fame invites. So envy obviously is a form of human disconnect. So we all have envy within us. And so when our best friend becomes the poster person for a great film or a rock star or so on and so forth, it becomes really, really difficult for the other people around him or her to feel good about themselves if they already don't, especially if they already don't. So that takes on a life of its own. And sometimes people who are in the limelight, spotlight, lose friends over it because they just can't tolerate that kind of a schism, that kind of a financial and social division.
Well, we talk about friends. It's interesting. Jennifer Lawrence, who became her fame as Katniss from the Hunger Games, basically said this is really interesting. She explained, it's funny how she, Katniss, her character, and I have made this trip together from the beginning. In the first movie, they force her to wear makeup, wear dresses, and people talk about that, and she doesn't understand. I know exactly how she feels. I experienced the same thing. This can be a very weird world, but after a while, you're not afraid anymore, and you can handle it. But her personal life is ruined. I mean, come on, she's got an Academy Award, for goodness sakes. I had to create a new one to get used to this new life. It's hard to take. It's hard and takes time, but I'm sure I will get used to it. I'm just mourning my old life. I miss it. I don't want to forget what it's like going to the coffee shop and people look at me like a normal person. A part of me can't get used to it. And then she talks about the fact that one time she went to the store and she just wanted to buy bananas, right? And she realized that it was just too much of a hassle. A lot of anxiety comes from something as simple as me going to the grocery store just because I don't know what could happen and I have nightmares about it. And I'm walking to the shopping mall and suddenly people start surrounding me and there's nowhere for me to go. So I call my friends to ask them to pick me up some bananas because it's just not worth it.
And that's where the social isolation starts to spread. So they go more and more inward. No wonder their homes are little palaces, self-contained, because they can't really go anywhere comfortably. So they'll have their own bowling alley, or they'll have their
movie
own
theater, pool, tennis court.
Not that they wouldn't
the whole 9
anyway,
years.
but it just
Correct.
kind of forces the person to live in a very isolated
It is, and
bubble.
it's like the fruit of their labor. They've earned it. They deserve it. They're enjoying it, but they're a prisoner in their own home.
Right.
It's crazy.
Right.
But, one thing that's mentioned in all this is the fact that if there's a stable family, it pays off in droves. We can talk about the crazy ones all day long, but look at the Osmond family. Right? They were on TV early. They were performers and singing. They had an amazing TV show, and they've come out okay. Natalie Portman is an example. She started as a child actor and graduated from Harvard and actually won an Oscar. She had a very strong family. Dakota Fanning, same thing. She's been an actor and did well. Justin Timberlake, for the most part. Jodie Foster, she, of course, was a very young actress and graduated from Yale. Talent alone is not enough for youngsters to survive and thrive in Hollywood, but those who can survive walk away from the arsenal of an experience at their disposal. So they have to have, not only discipline, but it helps to have a very strong family that supports you and isn't trying to vampire you.
I like that description, because when you have that foundation, and that's true for anybody, when we have a foundation, we have pillars, we have this kind of like our own inner fortress, so to speak, that we can go to our families, where we can go to our families and be nourished from the inside out by our families, then I think that we can have more immunity toward people who are trying to take from us and vampire us. It's very, very important to be that rooted. I always admired Meryl Streep because it seems like she's always put her husband and family first, and that's her base, and everybody needs that kind of base, especially when you're going to fly up there, with the stars, right? When you're going to be up there with the stars, you've got to root down. And so sometimes it's those people in your life that have always been there for you who form the base. Because
childhood is about finding out who you are and being able to relate to others. And those things are harder to learn when you're famous and you're under public scrutiny. Well, what I want to do is talk in a minute about Judy Garland, who was the epitome, in my view, of not having a family. But if you're just tuning in, folks, thanks so much for watching and listening. This is Dr. Judy WTF, which is What the Freud. I'm your host, Walt Lusk, with Dr. Judy Rosenberg, and you can check us out on Stitcher and iTunes. And now for those of you that have iPhones, you can check us out on the Psychological Healing Center app, where you can get excerpts from Dr. Judy's book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect, was available on Amazon. And, of course, all the stuff from a radio show and blogs that are growing. So thanks so much for tuning in and listening. And we're here talking about the perils of being a child actor.
And it's a call-in show.
And it's a call-in show. And if you want to call us, our number is 323-843-2826. That's 323-843-2826. If you have someone you know or want to know that's famous, or you want to get on the couch with someone who's famous, feel free to call in. But one of the ones that had really issues, of course, was Judy Garland. She died at age, I think it was 47. Let me look.
So young.
Oh, my gosh. She was recruited when she was 13. And she died at the age of 47. She went through 5 husbands, and she died of an accidental overdose of barbiturates. She died in a rented house when she was in London doing some performance for a play. She tried my, quote, I tried my damnedest to believe in the rainbow that I tried to get over, and I couldn't. So what? In her own words, on drugs, drink, suicide attempts, and her loathing of Hollywood. She was paid a bunch of money to write a book. She never finished more than 65 pages of the memoir in which she wanted to reveal her side of her very public struggles from the age of 3 that led to nervous breakdowns, suicide attempts, pill overdoses, alcohol abuse, 5 marriages, and her early death at age 47 in 1969.
Well, she's near and dear to my heart because I allude to the Wizard of
Yes,
Oz.
you do. You interlace the Wizard of Oz in your book.
Yeah, the Wizard of Oz.
The Wizard of Oz?
My grandson calls the movie The Wizard of Oz.
Well, you know the difference in Invasion of Oz? It's about $50.
$50. And of course, our shared favorite song, the Rainbow Song. And, it's nice when your successes are public, but when your failures are public,
Absolutely.
too.
Oh, my
Ouch.
goodness, yes.
Right? So how many people do you know who can withstand that level of scrutiny and to be, we all try to hide our little flaws and, we all do. And so when those little flaws are now blasted on the screen or blasted through the radio, It's not fun at all.
Judy Garland wanted to tell her story about the ruthless studio system at MGM Studios that she was swept into a tender age of 13 and was never able to escape. Basically, the studio was her parents. Mm-hmm. And endless tolls of working, lack of real schooling, piled with pills to thin, pills to sleep, and crash the endlessly perpetual myths and lies about her life and loves. In other words, they would give her pills to wake her up and make sure she pepped her up and would perform well. And then when she was done, they'd give her pills to put her to sleep so she could go to sleep and start all over the next day.
And how ironic, they had her singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
Yes.
And the idealism of a better world, and she was in this hellhole,
Oh,
and
she was,
people didn't know it, and yet on screen, she looked like she was perfectly healthy, perfectly beautiful, perfectly capable, perfectly together.
Well,
Never would have
that's the
known it.
magic of Hollywood.
Right.
Yes, it says here they give us pep pills. They take us to the studio hospital and knock us cold with sleeping pills. After 4 hours, they'd wake us up and give us pep pills again, and that's the way I got all mixed up. And then she had to lose weight even when she was on The Wizard of Oz. So it was 6 days a week, working for 14 years, 18 to 24-hour shooting schedules. But she was a very demanding actress herself, and she put some of this on herself that she always wanted to be the performer and give her best if she was in front of an audience. So she can blame a majority of that on, of course, the studio system. But she was there because she had a work ethic and tried to do her best to perform.
Yet she started
even if she was exhausted.
She was how old?
Well, she started performing when she was 3, but when she was 13, she got lassoed into the MGM studio system.
And so think about what kind of parents she must have had to allow her to be drugged.
She didn't have many parents.
She
That was the
didn't.
problem. No, it was the studio system, and ultimately that's what did her in. Mm-hmm. So we had to do that. I felt humiliated and unwanted. I wanted to black out the future as well as the past. I didn't want to live anymore. I wanted to hurt myself and others. She always believed the studio was responsible for starting her down the road or dependency on drugs. She hated Hollywood. But it was always that, and that was her home. Judy Garland died at age 47.
We have talked so much about narcissism. Speaking of narcissism in the world of the studios, how that whole system was set up to objectify her. The human being didn't matter as much as the product. So if she wasn't part of their production and their vision of who they needed her to be, then they weren't going to be very interested. And so there was always this pull toward what they needed, and the more she fulfilled on what they needed, the more of herself that she lost. So as a human being, she was dwindling, and Hollywood was literally vampiring the fiber of her being to meet their financial and artistic goals. And so...
and she was always looking for love. I mean, she went through 5 husbands, right?
Right.
One of them was Minnelli. He was a lot older. And so therefore, of course, it would be a father figure. So
Yeah.
she tried in her own way to do the best she could.
Do you have any research on who her parents were?
No, I do not. The
We'll
illusion
look
of all
that
the
up.
articles, the illusion of
Yeah.
all the articles that I read for our previous show back in December was it really was a studio system because she worked so much and so long. You know, they'd wake her up, they'd put her to bed, and you know, in the meantime, she'd work her tail off.
So in a way, she was very much a metaphor for the part that she played in The Wizard of Oz, because The Wizard of Oz was the illusory Hollywood system,
Yes.
right? And then the Auntie Em and Uncle whoever,
Yes.
I forgot, they were the fake. They were the parents that weren't really the parents.
Yes.
And then she was in this land of Oz where they were, where she didn't feel that she had any power at all, and it was ruled by wizards and
A guy
wicked
behind the
witches
curtain that you
and-
weren't supposed to pay attention to.
Exactly.
But you do realize that in the movie, if you watch, her uncle was actually the Scarecrow, and Annie M was one of the witches. So there's a lot of metaphors in there that you have to look a couple times to figure out.
And in the book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect, I use the Wizard of Oz as a metaphor for revealing and peeling back the layers of truth. Because when we live in a lie, when we live in an illusory world, we lose touch with the truth. And sometimes it takes the innocent to draw back that curtain and expose. And in this case, it was Toto. I call him Toto, the truth dog, who got to pull back the curtain and reveal that behind there was nothing but an old, incompetent, almost silly old man that was running a fake world, an illusory fake world that everyone was buying into, which is what happens to us as children, right? We always buy into our parents' version of the world, and that's where these horrible negative core beliefs come from. Because if our parents say we're stupid, then we're stupid, and if they say that we're unlovable or treat us as though we're unlovable, we feel unlovable. And so it's always the parents that create the world, and it's always the children that buy in. And as we love to say, childhood is...
Well, two things. One, childhood is a hostage situation, and in some instances, a phrase I use a lot is perception is reality. If somebody perceives something, that becomes that reality, even if it's not correct, because, again, that is their perception.
And I refer to it as a cracked lens of perception.
Cracked lens of perception.
Right. So speaking from a WTF perspective, a what the Freud perspective, why do people go into becoming famous? The reasons are too many to really discuss in one show, but in essence, one of the things that happens in childhood, as we've spoken much about, is that children are demeaned and devalued and destroyed. And to compensate for that, sometimes people choose the route of fame to mitigate the damages of a childhood that made them feel worthless and unlovable. And so fame, in some instances, can be seen as a defense mechanism against being devalued.
Yes, but I
In
think it
some
can also add
instances.
insult to injury, right? Okay, so they don't feel like they're much of anything. They don't feel like they're worthy.
Right.
Then they get involved in being famous, but then the fame fades.
Right.
But then that means that they're now even more worthless because
Correct.
they were worth something,
Right.
and now they're not worth anything.
Yeah, it's the overvaluing and the devaluing,
Yes.
and that's what they're replicating, because if in their family of origin they were overvalued and it felt so good to be overvalued, and then the next thing the parents are dropping them because they didn't perform according to their wishes, and then they're devalued, then it's almost like you could take that template and play it out into what's happening in their here and now and see the whole process replicate.
Well, actually, some of them, it's really a quest for media spotlight immortality. Many celebrities fear their fame is fleeting, which leads them to conclude that obsess about losing the attraction of their fans and the media. After a celebrity's fame peaks, it's often a brutal ride down as they garner less attention from others. And they, desperate to regain notoriety, in doing so, they become prone to buffoonery. They're going to do crazy things to, get attention in the limelight. And
You mean like twerking?
twerking, but they're alluding more to things like self-destructive behaviors.
Oh,
Twerking
okay.
hasn't been that self-destructive yet to Miley Cyrus.
You did say that, didn't you? Huh?
No.
I thought it was a figment of my imagination.
No, it's and what's interesting is it's really a love-hate thing with the paparazzi. And the best example I can give you with that is, we remember Paris Hilton. She was famous for being famous. And she decided.
What about that Angelina? Remember
Angelina Jolie?
No, not Angelina.
Oh, Angelina. Oh, yeah, it's right here in Hollywood. She had billboards all over the place.
Yeah, she was famous for being famous.
She was just famous for having a bunch of billboards. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. But Paris Hilton got so pissed at the paparazzi, she said, forget about it. I'm going to move, and I'm not going to tell anybody. So she did. She moved, didn't tell anybody, and nobody really knew where she was. And literally within 6 months, I think it was 4, she was lonely.
Oh.
So what did she do? I kid you not. She called the paparazzi and says, "Here I am."
My goodness.
And the whole thing started all over again. So what in reality it means is somebody who's famous, like a Paris Hilton, they need the paparazzi to remain famous. And the paparazzi needs them to promote their fame. See, it goes back and forth, back and forth.
Hand and glove.
Hand and glove.
That's right.
And,
Right.
the point is these stars hate the paparazzi, but they don't really hate the paparazzi, because if the paparazzi wasn't there,
They wouldn't be famous.
where would they be?
No.
They'd be stuck in their castle.
Right.
Another reason is loss of challenges. The experience of reaching the pinnacle of your goals and then realizing it's not quite as fulfilling as you thought. And it can be very disconcerting. You've landed your dream job and begin settling in after your first big break. And it's exhilarating. But then you ever wonder, is this all there is? Is this as good as it gets? And they've strived for it and finally arrived. They've made it. But, then, of course, there's dangerous risks on the way when they need to seek a bigger challenge or, their star fades.
So that leads into trying to capture their youth, capture their original light, and then we go into the topic of plastic surgery and trying to morph themselves and look like they did when they were in their teens, or at least try to look like they did.
Well,
in
they
their
want to look.
teens
They want to look like they did 20 years ago, because that's what
Right.
everybody thinks that they look like, right? Oh my gosh, look how old they are, right?
Right.
That's why they probably killed off. Oh no, I can't say that. They killed off Harrison Ford in Star Wars. For those of you who've seen the movie, he's like getting old. It was like, okay, we're done. Of course, he didn't want to do it anymore.
That was the last episode, right?
Yeah,
I think
I'm
so.
sorry, folks. I'm sorry. Spoiler alert. But what's interesting is they also have a glory for greed of the glory. Ugly beasts that, if not tamed, can consume their person's life. The adoration is gratifying until the high wears off.
Right.
If fame is enticing. What's interesting is it talks about Solomon from the Bible. Solomon married 700 wives. He had 300 mistresses. I mean, my goodness, that guy was busy. Amassed an estate larger than any king at his time, actually ever. And he partied like no biblical figure ever has or ever did. But what did he conclude? Quote, "Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income." That's Ecclesiastes 5:10. Okay.
Well said.
So the escalation eventually disappears. Stardom is the great deceiver that blinds people into thinking that more money or power or prestige will solve all of their problems.
And it becomes a drug.
And
So
it becomes
they're
just
always
like a
chasing
drug.
the high.
That's it.
And the high is always elusive. So
And
they
that's
need
why-
more and more of it, and it just never...
That's it. And that's why they chase drugs and everything
Right.
else as an escape, because what happens is they crash. There's fatigue, depression, anxiety, the need for another pick-me-up. And so therefore they need, in order to feel that, they go do the roller coasters of highs and lows. And of course then there's depression and driving them back to the habit we had once again.
And then our cell phones play into this because they could check how many tweets they're getting, right? And what did you say? People check their cell
200,
phones?
it's like 253 times a day, which is an average of a
Jeez.
16-hour day,
Right.
every 15 minutes. But again, going back to that very quickly, we are trained to do that, and that's what they want. You can't miss that next tweet or that next Instagram or that next alert from Facebook, or maybe you get news and there's all these alerts. Oh my gosh, you might miss an email, but you know what? It'll be there tomorrow. All of it will be there tomorrow.
Right. And we talk a lot about negative core beliefs, and we all have a negative core belief. And in the case of famous people, they may have this negative core belief, and then the fame, it goes right in the face of this negative core belief. So if they feel that they're ugly, let's say, and everybody is telling them how beautiful they are, it's quite confusing because their parents told them they were ugly all their life, and now they're getting this other message, and it's very discombobulating for them to make sense of everything. And so I think in that case where the core belief is really, really activated, they never really, even though they may look polished on the cover of a magazine or in a movie, they never ever really feel beautiful, even though they may be told a gazillion times that they are. I remember a quote from Cindy Crawford. Somebody said to her, "Oh my God, I'm sure every woman would like to look like you." And she said, "Yeah, even I want to look like me." Meaning that it takes so much work.
I was going to say she's in the
to
gym.
make her up. I mean,
Yes.
she's a beautiful woman, but yet,
she's in the gym 3-4 hours a day.
Yeah.
Right, meditating, spas. I mean, who knows? It's a boatload of work.
And the work on her hair and the makeup and the angles and the clothing, I mean, it just takes a lot of work to look that way. So we don't, even Cindy Crawford admits that she doesn't just pop out of bed and look that way.
Absolutely. Right. And with that, we have to go to our final segment of our show, which is Shrink That Tune, where we take a popular song. I'm going to read the lyrics, and Dr. Judy is going to shrink it from her psychological and mind map perspective. And in memory of a very famous gentleman who passed recently, and we talked about it before, we're going to use another one of his songs, which is very apropos, David Bowie. And the song is Fame. Fame makes a man take things over. Fame lets him lose. Hard to swallow. Fame puts these where things are hollow. Fame.
So fame makes people puff up, take things over. Now they're in that one-upsman position, and then you let that person's narcissism get loose, and it's hard for other people to swallow that because they don't like that kind of power coming from anybody. And then you're in a world that's obviously pretty hollow because you're not really liked for who you are. And it's just your image that's being worshipped.
Fame, it's not your brain. It's just the flame that burns your chains to keep you insane. Fame is what you like in the limo. Fame is what you get is no tomorrow. Fame is what you need to have to borrow.
So they're talking about the flash in the pan that makes people crazy, and like a limo, it's just a ride and doesn't really have much substance to it. And the no tomorrow part is really interesting because, as you said, people die younger when they're under the pressure of fame. So maybe there's a reference to it cuts life short.
Yeah, well, it's funny as I on Facebook periodically, you get these alerts from birthdays, and I always put in there many times, happy birthday, you better party hard because you're never going to be this young ever again.
And remember, today is the day that we will never be this young ever again.
That's why they call it a present.
Right. Yes.
Fame, 9, it's mine, it's just his line. To bind your time, it drives you to crime. Fame, could it be the best? Could it be? Really? Really, babe? Could it be my babe? Could it be? Really?
So the reference to the babe, something beautiful, could it really be real? Fame, is it the best? Obviously the person doesn't really think that it's the best because they're talking about this temporary situation. Like a babe, like an affair. A babe passes through.
Is it any wonder I reject you first? Fame, is it any wonder you are too cool to fool? Fame, bully for you, chilly for me, gotta get the rain check on pain.
Boy, that's a mouthful.
Yes, it is.
So I think the person's trying to reject fame, but it's not that easy because it's really cool and pretty chilly because it could bully you into being into the limelight of fame because there's so much, so to speak, narcissistic supplies there. Got to get a rain check on pain.
Yeah, and then there's
Right.
more, a little bit more. Fame, what's your name? Feeling so gay, feeling gay brings so much pain.
So all in all, this person, David Bowie, doesn't think there's a lot of good in it. So much pain, the ups and downs, with all the limos and the babes and all of it, there's a lot of pain to fame.
There's a lot of pain to fame. Yep. And that is our show. And just for that, thanks so much for listening and watching. We're going to close out with the song Fame. I'm your host, Walt Lusk, with Dr. Judy of Dr. Judy Rosenberg of the Psychological Healing Center. Go check out our app on iTunes, on your iPhone, and you can pull us on iTunes and Stitcher as well. And until next time, God bless everyone, and here's our fame.